Hello and welcome. I'm Esther Gidou-Ewart. This is Africa 54 and here's what's coming up. Rescuers race against time to find survivors in the rubble more than 48 hours after Morocco's deadliest earthquake in more than 6 decades. We'll have updates from Marrakech, Morocco. History was made over the weekend when the African Union became a permanent member of the G20, comprising the world's richest and most powerful countries. And Kenya's Agnes Ngetich shatters the women-only world 10-kilometer record by clocking 29 minutes and 24 seconds at the World Athletics Elite Labor Road Race in Romania. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin our broadcast in North Africa, where search and rescue workers in Morocco on Monday are sifting through the rubble of collapsed buildings in hopes of finding survivors from a deadly 6.8 magnitude quake that hit Friday at approximately 11:11 p.m. local time, about 72 kilometers southwest of Marrakech in the country's high Atlas Mountains. Moroccan state television says the death toll is nearly 2,500, but that number is likely to rise. Many survivors spend a third night outside their destroyed homes or homes rendered unsafe by Morocco's most powerful earthquake since at least 1900. Survivors are desperate for help to find loved ones feared trapped under the rubble. Moroccan officials have so far accepted government-offered aid from just 4 countries: Spain, Qatar, Britain, and the United Arab Emirates. Morocco's Interior Ministry says its officials want to avoid a lack of coordination that would be counterproductive. The United Nations says an estimated 300,000 people affected by Friday night's quake. Most of the destruction and deaths were in Al Haouz province in the high Atlas Mountains, where homes folded in on themselves and steep, winding roads became clogged with rubble, and residents sometimes cleared away rocks themselves. Aftershocks have since hit a wide swath of the quake zone, rattling nerves in areas where damage has left buildings unstable. Meanwhile, help in many forms is on the way to Morocco. VOA's Arashar Basadi has more.
A security camera captures the moment a 6.8 magnitude earthquake struck Morocco as a man runs for his life through rubble. It was a common scene last Friday as the quake shook parts of this North African nation. Morocco's public broadcaster SNRT released images of cars crushed by rubble, highlighting the challenges facing rescue workers. Much of the quake's damage was in mountainous regions where villagers had already begun burying their dead as of Saturday. And as Moroccans and tourists visiting their country took part in blood drives at area clinics, Morocco's King Mohammed VI ordered the nation's armed forces to mobilize search and rescue teams. He also called for special prayer services Sunday at mosques. Many Moroccans have been sleeping in the streets for fear of aftershocks destroying their already damaged homes. The United States and others have offered support to the government and people of Morocco.
We've reached out immediately to the Moroccan government, made very clear to them that we're prepared to assist in any way that we can. We have the U.S. Agency for International Development, which takes the lead in our efforts, mobilizing, and we're waiting to hear from the Moroccan government how we can be of most assistance. But we're tracking this very carefully, and our hearts go out to the people of Morocco who suffered this devastating earthquake, and we stand ready to help in any way that we can.
For those living through the disaster, their government's efforts have not gone unnoticed.
Authorities are doing their best, and even like in the high Atlas Mountains where people lost their lives and where that earthquake hit harder, they're trying to help. And I'm very sure that our people, our Moroccan people and our Moroccan community can get together and we can go through this.
Morocco has not seen this powerful an earthquake since 2004, when a magnitude 6.3 quake killed more than 550 people in one of the country's poorer regions. Morocco's worst earthquake in modern times happened in 1960. It destroyed most of the popular tourist destination of Agadir and killed at least 12,000 people. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News.
About 100 teams made up of a total of 3,500 rescuers are registered with the United Nations platform and are ready to deploy in Morocco when asked, according to Rescuers Without Borders. A Spanish search and rescue team arrived in Marrakech and headed to the rural Talat Yaqub, according to Spain's emergency military unit. We get more on the earthquake in this interview conducted by VOA's Paul Ndiho with Emmanuel Ngapela in Marrakech.
The death toll of the devastating earthquake that hit Morocco on Friday night has reached on 2,497 people as of 10 a.m. today. It's a new data from the Morocco Ministry of Interior said that the new data show the injured team has also increased to 2,476 persons. And the major province continue to record the majority of deaths with 1,452 deaths, following by Taroudant and Shishawa and Marrakech.
From your vantage point, how is the Kingdom of Morocco doing to make sure that they reached out to all these places that have been affected?
The government has taken a lot of measures to supply this disaster, bring to people foods and drink, offer tent, and the First Army of the Kingdom is also on the ground to help people on this disaster.
Are there any rescue missions on the ground that have come from other parts of the world to help with the rescue mission?
For countries sent people here in Morocco is Spain, Qatar, United Kingdom, and Emirates.
You are on the ground. What are the survivors telling you? How are they coping with what happened?
The real need of people right now it's to find a place to rest, to spend the night, because there is a lot of people spend night outdoor, and it's very difficult for her because the weather is little cold on the night right now.
You seem to suggest that a lot of people on the ground right now are in need of basic stuff. For example, they need shelter, tents, or housing for that matter.
Yeah. It's the real need here, because foods and other assistance is provided by people here. There is a lot of people who came to help.
The Kingdom of Morocco has been appealing to the rest of the world to come to their rescue. Are people responding to that call and coming to help out?
Many people who came from many countries, and there is a volunteer who come from France, from Spain, from many other countries is here to help. We was yesterday on hospital. We saw many volunteers came from many other nations come to help in this province of Marrakech.
My heart goes out to everybody out there.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That was Emmanuel Ngapela in Marrakech, Morocco, speaking to VOA's Paul Ndiho. History was made on Saturday when the African Union became a permanent member of the group of G20. Here's Associated Press correspondent Philip Crowther with more.
The G20 summit here in New Delhi ended with what looked like a victory lap for Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, touring the media center here and waving to the press. India believes it has shown the world it can stand up and represent the global south, the developing world, all while finding consensus among some deeply divided nations. The lasting legacy from this summit may be the arrival of a new member in the group of 20 rich and developing nations. It welcomed the African Union as a member, putting it on the same level as the European Union. The group of 55 African nations now gets a seat at the table of what may have to be called the G21 next time around. That'll be in Brazil. The one thereafter will be in South Africa. It's a big moment for the global south. Brazil is one of those countries that has tried to move beyond the disputes over Ukraine. It's President Lula saying here that the G20 wasn't the appropriate forum to discuss the war. Many, with the notable exceptions of China and host India, had been pushing for a stronger rebuke of Russia's war. India managed to get all countries to sign off on an agreement, despite the war in Ukraine, and Russia's opposition to any language that would point the finger at Moscow. This year's final statement highlights the human suffering and negative added impacts of the war in Ukraine, but it does not mention Russia's invasion directly. Western leaders still called the consensus a success and praised India's nimble balancing act. Philip Crowther for VOA in New Delhi.
For more on the African Union joining the group of G20, I'm joined from Princeton, New Jersey by Dennis Matanda, adjunct professor of American politics and international business at the Washington-based Catholic University. Professor Matanda, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on this momentous occasion.
Now, Dennis, for a very long time, Africa has yearned to become a member of the group of G20, but what's the significance of joining this group?
Let's not play around with this. This is what President Biden would call a BFD, a big effing deal, and what President Trump would call huge. And it's not just from that perspective, and we need to recognize that this is the first time that you have people recognizing the fact that Africa is 55 countries. This is one of those things happening at a time when an organization that is less than 100 years is coming to the table, but more importantly, it is coming to the table as the vast majority of poor countries and countries that have gone through a negative thing like COVID. From that perspective, there is a real opportunity here for the African Union to come to the table. And that is a strength, and that is the opportunity. The significance here is that for the first time, the African Union is being juxtaposed with the European Union, and that is really significant.
But most people would like to hear, what is the African Union going to bring to the table? What are the issues the continent yearns for and want them accomplished now that they've become a member of a very, very powerful group?
You know, what's interesting is that only a few outlets have captured the essence of what the African Union can bring to the table, which is why it's very important for us to recognize the weaknesses and the threats. The African Union coming to the table needs to come to the table like the European Union. Unlike the European Union, the African Union doesn't have its own development finance institution. Yes, we have the African Development Bank, but it does not necessarily work directly for and with the African Union. But it then brings us to this other fact: interests. There are not enough interests to spur the African Union forward. Yes, you have the South African businessman, you have the Nigerian businessman, but what do you have as major interests? Related to that, Africa has Agenda 2063. Has the African Union been able to bring its AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area? Has the African Union been able to tell its fellow business people, its other 20 member states, that there are significant opportunities to invest in the world's largest free trade area by number of countries and significant size? From that perspective, we need to remember that Africa is still doing very badly in terms of trade, in terms of investment. But again, for me, those are the opportunities juxtaposed with the threats.
So what does the continent need to do, Dennis, to become a powerful voice in this group? Because we know that almost every other country, look at China, Russia and others, always want a piece of the pie of the continent.
I think we need to stop thinking about what the other places want, what China wants, what Europe wants, and start the process of generating Africa's own narrative. The African Union needs to undertake a comprehensive assessment of its opportunities. And the primary opportunity here is the region's development finance institutions. In other words, from advocating for things, you need to have investment-grade interlocutors or interceders. In other words, if you're going to have global capital playing in Africa, you need to come to the table with the best people who can actually control the finances and basically channel those resources to the opportunities that achieve the most effective impact for the region. And from that perspective, we need to remember that the African Union can be all it wants to be, but it needs to have more power. I'm so glad that it's coming at a time when my friend Muchanga is now the Economic Affairs Commissioner. I mean, it's the first time. So I think there are ways that the African Union can play a major role.
Right, Dennis, thank you very much. Professor Dennis Matanda of American Politics and International Business at Catholic University here in Washington. Niger's military leaders this week reopened the country's airspace to all commercial flights, ending a closure that had been in place since August 6th. But in a VOA exclusive, U.S. military officials say the change to commercial flight access has not normalized U.S. drone flight frequencies. VOA's Pentagon correspondent Carla Bob has the details.
U.S. officials tell VOA military drone flights out of bases in Niger have been limited since the coup in July. Niger is the U.S. military's hub for counter-terror intelligence, reconnaissance, and surveillance in West Africa. U.S. drones launched from bases in Niger's capital and this airbase in Agadez, about 1,000 kilometers to the northeast, have provided eyes in the skies above the volatile Lake Chad Basin area of Cameroon, Chad, Niger, and Nigeria. In recent years, Islamist militants have wreaked havoc on local populations.
The U.S. has limited capacity and limited resources and limited basing options in the region, and it's barely keeping a lid on the problem.
Limiting those drone missions, Raggio says, gives militants an advantage. That's because reducing intelligence and surveillance above impacts U.S. and partner forces' counter-terror options on the ground, according to retired U.S. General Frank McKenzie, the former chief of U.S. Central Command.
It reduces your ability to find targets. It reduces your ability to go to the final stages when you're going to be able to attack them. It has a significant effect on the ability to conduct those kinds of operations. Significant.
U.S.-Niger security cooperation has been suspended since the July coup, and the Pentagon announced on Thursday it was repositioning some of its forces from Airbase 101 at the capital to Airbase 201 in Agadez.
There is no perceived threat in terms of any threat to U.S. troops and no threat of violence on the ground. This is simply a precautionary measure.
The U.S. has some 1,100 U.S. military personnel inside Niger. U.S. officials say fewer than 100 have left since the coup began, due to either medical issues or regularly scheduled mission rotations. Carla Babb, VOA News, the Pentagon.
Still to come, an education crisis looms in Kenya's northeast. We'll tell you about it after this break.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
The U.S. on Monday is marking the 22nd anniversary of the September 11th terror attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people. President Joe Biden is due to deliver an address to members of the military, first responders and their families at a military base in Anchorage, Alaska. Vice President Kamala Harris is due to attend a ceremony at the National September 11th Memorial and Museum in New York. First Lady Jill Biden, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, and Joint Chief of Staff Chairman General Mark Milley are all due to participate in a wreath-laying ceremony at the National 9/11 Pentagon Memorial. Burkina Faso's ruling junta Monday says that Radio Omega, one of the nation's most popular radio stations, can resume broadcasting after it had been suspended for airing an interview that was deemed insulting to Niger's new military leaders. And Tunisia's culture ministry says it expects to soon reopen the Bardo National Museum 2 years after it was closed when President Kais Saied shattered the parliament that shares the same building. The ministry did not give an exact date to reopen the facility, but says that some restoration work has been completed. An education crisis is once again looming in Kenya as hundreds of non-local teachers demand transfers from their predominantly Muslim region in the country's northeast after a series of deadly attacks by Al-Shabaab militants. Schools reopened August 28th, but most students have not yet resumed classes. Ahmed Hussein reports from Wajir County, Kenya.
Here in Konton at a primary school in Kenya's Wajir County, teacher Ibrahim Hassan begins work. Hassan has volunteered to teach after most of the teachers left because of the recent attacks in the area by the Islamist militant group Al-Shabaab. He says the school turned some of the pupils away.
Since the students are many and we are so less, we can't teach it. Sometimes you send some children at the home.
Since 2014, more than 4,000 teachers have fled schools from the northeastern region due to insecurity. Al-Shabaab has killed 16 people in the region in the past 2 months, including 2 non-local teachers, and it has injured upwards of a dozen others. Many schools near the Somalia border, badly hit by the exodus, are on the brink of closure. Wajir County residents say the need is too great.
5 among the youth have volunteered themselves to take part in the teaching. We should continue teaching because of this innocent children who will become the leaders of tomorrow.
Over the past week, hundreds of teachers have been camping outside the office of the Teachers Service Commission, or TSC, in Nairobi, seeking transfer from the region.
We did an oath. We took an oath to work in every part of the country, but you cannot work in a place where death is waiting for you.
Drawn from Mandera, Wajir, and Garissa counties in the northeast, the teachers said they were not returning to duty until the employer moved them from the region.
We've been affected by a lack of security in our workplace. As you know, one of our colleagues was killed, and after we asked to be transferred, those responsible have turned down our request.
Last year, the Teachers Service Commission contracted most of the affected teachers who are required to work in the area for 3 to 5 years before seeking transfer. Schools reopened for the 3rd term on August 28th, but most of the students in Kenya's northeast have not resumed classes because of the teacher exodus. Experts warn that the exodus could bring learning in the region to a complete halt and are asking the government to train more teachers.
One of the challenges the region faces is it's not able to attract good number of high school leavers with the right grades to join teaching. So the general belief is that if the teaching grade is lower to like C-, it might attract numbers.
The region has a history of violence involving teachers. 17 teachers died in 2014 after a bus they were traveling in was attacked while heading to Nairobi for the December holidays. In January 2020, TSC transferred tutors from northeastern Kenya to other parts of the country, citing insecurity after 3 of them were killed by Al-Shabaab during a night raid. Many parents from Kenya's northeastern region are hopeful a lasting solution will be found soon so the children can get access to quality education like the rest of the students in the country. Ahmed Hussein for VOA News, Wajir, Kenya.
Kenya's Agnes Ngetich shattered the women's world 10-kilometer record by clocking 29 minutes and 24 seconds at the World Athletics Elite Labor Road Race in Brussels, Romania on Sunday. Ngetich, 22, covered the initial 5 kilometers in 14 minutes and 25 seconds, 4 seconds faster than the previous world record for that distance. The previous record was held by the late Agnes Tirop, also of Kenya. Ngetich's compatriot Catherine Relin came in second in 30 minutes and 14 seconds, while Uganda's Joy Cheptoyek settled for a third place, finishing in 30 minutes, 34 seconds.
First of all, I didn't expect to break the world record. I just came here to improve my time. I just wanted 30, early 30, like at 30:01, 30:02 to break a course record, but it just came as a surprise. World record I didn't expect. Yeah, but I'm happy, I thank God. Yeah.
Another sports note, American tennis player Coco Gauff, 19, won the Women's U.S. Open Saturday by beating Belarusian Aryna Sabalenka in the final. It was the first Grand Slam win for Gauff. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.
Persistent grievances cannot be resolved through more fighting. That is abundantly clear. And with instability growing in places such as Sudan and Niger, factions within Libya must avoid actions that could precipitate a spiral into wider violence. The best path forward for the Libyan people is to consolidate support for elections as soon as possible. We're open to supporting the formation of a technocratic caretaker government whose sole task would be to bring the country to free and fair elections. This Libyan-led effort will ensure no single player has exclusive control over public expenditures, and it will help address legitimate grievances over equitable revenue distribution. The Libyan people deserve change. They deserve progress. They deserve hope. And it's up to Libya's leaders to take action